A 17-year-old girl is lowered into the ground on Christmas Eve. Her grandfather is the richest lottery winner in American history. 2 years earlier, this man stood in a gas station parking lot. He was holding the largest single lottery ticket ever cashed in America, $314 million, a construction business he had built with his own 2 hands, a wife of 42 years, a granddaughter he adored more than anything. So how does winning $314 million end with a teenage girl in a coffin? How does the biggest lottery win in American history end in addiction and death? And what does that say about what money can actually buy? This is the story of Jack Whittaker, the man who won everything and lost almost everyone he loved. By the end, you will understand why he wished he had torn up that ticket. Andrew Jack Whittaker Jr. was born in 1947 in a small town called Jumping Branch, West Virginia. He grew up working class, in coal country, where nothing was handed to anyone. By his 50s, Jack had built something real. He ran Diversified Enterprises, a construction company he had grown over decades of field work and long hours. Around Hurricane, West Virginia, people knew him simply as the Cowboy Man. A heavy-set contractor in a black cowboy hat, a regular at the C&L Superserve gas station, where he stopped most mornings for biscuits and bacon before work. He had been married to his wife, Jewel, for 42 years. He had a daughter, Ginger, and a granddaughter named Brandi, who he doted on completely. Friends say he put her on his company payroll and that the two of them would lie in bed together, eating popcorn, watching television for hours. He was not the kind of man chasing a windfall. He already had a life that worked. But on Christmas Eve, 2002, on his way to buy biscuits, he picked up a $100 worth of Powerball tickets because the jackpot had crossed $300 million, and something told him to try. The next morning, Jack Whittaker checked the numbers on television. He had won, not a share of the jackpot, the entire thing. $314.9 million, the largest single-ticket lottery prize in American history at that time. He chose the lump sum, $113,386,407.77 after taxes, paid out all at once. Overnight, a West Virginia contractor became one of the wealthiest private citizens in the state. What he did next made headlines for being generous, not greedy. He set up a charitable foundation and gave away an estimated $23 million, funding 2 new churches in his community. He handed cash to waitresses, to strangers, to family members who asked. "I've had to work for everything in my life," he told reporters at the time. "This is the first thing that's ever been given to me." For a few months, it looked like a fairy tale. A hardworking man, suddenly able to give endlessly to the people around him. He felt, for the first time, completely untouchable. But untouchable is exactly the word that should have worried him. Here is where things started to change. Jack Whittaker did not disappear with his fortune. He did not move quietly. He stayed exactly where he was. Same town, same gas station, same routine. But now everyone knew he was carrying enormous sums of cash. He carried briefcases stuffed with hundreds of thousands of dollars into casinos and strip clubs. He flashed it openly, treating strangers to rounds, handing out $100 bills like business cards. Within months, thieves broke into his Lincoln Navigator outside a strip club and stole a briefcase holding $245,000 in cash, along with cashier's checks worth another $300,000. He got lucky that time. Police recovered it. But the message had already gone out to everyone watching him. He was a walking target, and so, by extension, was every single person who loved him. What happened next would change everything, not just for Jack, but for the 17-year-old girl who carried his name. This is the part of the story most people never hear in full. First came the lawsuits. Casino employees accused him of assault. He was charged twice with driving under the influence. His home and his vehicle were broken into, repeatedly, by people who assumed there was always more cash to find. Then, in September 2004, an 18-year-old friend of his granddaughter Brandi was found dead inside Whittaker's own home. The death remains unexplained to this day. 3 months later, Brandi herself vanished. She had started using drugs, surrounded by people. Her family later said, who wanted her money more than her company. She was reported missing on December 9, 2004. 11 days later, her body was found wrapped in plastic near a boyfriend's home. Cocaine and methamphetamine were in her system. No cause of death was ever officially confirmed. No one was ever charged. She was buried on Christmas Eve, 2004, exactly 2 years to the day after her grandfather had bought that winning ticket. The marriage came next. In 2008, after 42 years together, Jewel Whittaker filed for divorce. The legal costs and settlement drained what remained of the fortune. In 2009, his daughter Ginger died of cancer at 42, a loss unrelated to the money, but one more grief stacked on top of all the others. In 2016, a home he owned burned to the ground, uninsured, while Jewel was inside. She escaped. The house did not survive. By then, the man who once handed out $100 bills at gas stations had almost nothing left but the headlines. Researching this story, a few things stood out. Patterns that show up again and again in people who lose sudden fortunes. The first is visibility. Jack Whittaker never hid his money. He carried it in plain sight, into public places, in cash, repeatedly. That single decision turned his family into a target for predators, more than once. The second is the belief that generosity equals safety. Jack assumed that giving freely would protect the people he loved. Instead, it placed his granddaughter in the orbit of people drawn to money, not to her. The third is the absence of structure. There was no team of advisors managing access to him, no boundaries around who could reach him or how. Sudden wealth without structure does not just risk your money. It can risk the people closest to you. Jack Whittaker spent his final years quietly, largely out of the spotlight, in declining health. In a 2007 interview, he said something that has outlived almost everything else about his story. "I'm only going to be remembered as the lunatic who won the lottery." He died in 2020, at 72. In 2007, reflecting on it all, he said something simple. "I wish I'd torn that ticket up. He won more money than most Americans will ever see in 10 lifetimes. And in the end, he would have traded every dollar of it to have his granddaughter back." If this story made you think differently about money, share it with someone who needs to hear it.